Hello and welcome to today's episode of The Boardroom, where, as always, we're live on Facebook and we're going to be having a conversation that will be of benefit to the business minds in our community, talking to some leading business minds about the important things that impact us and our society. And today we're going to be having a conversation about unlocking digital opportunities. And we're going to be talking to two very interesting guests from the Malta Communications Authority. We are live on Facebook, as I said, so if you'd like to join the conversation, please do add your comments or your questions below. But if not, you can watch this back on who'swho.mt, Malta's leading business portal. So now it gives me great pleasure to welcome today's guests. They are Antoine Sciberras. Antoine is the Chief Officer for Spectrum Management and Technology at the Malta Communications Authority, the MCA, and he is joined by Dr. Jean-Marie Mifsud, and Jean forms part of the Spectrum Management and Technology unit, again within the MCA. It's great to have you both on the boardroom. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you and good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning to you both. So, Antoine, I'm going to come to you first. The MCA, which recently celebrated its 20th anniversary, there was a fantastic conference, very varied and interesting conference that was held to celebrate that 20th anniversary. So, there's been 20 years of regulation in this very important space. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about what the MCA does, what you regulate, and sort of how things have evolved over these 20 years.
Absolutely. So, as you said, this year we celebrate our 20th year anniversary. In fact, we were established in 2001. And our, let's say, remit evolved from a need, a European need, to create more competition in the telecommunications marketplaces. So the legislator, the European Commission at the time, put forward the telecommunications framework, which established independent national regulatory authorities just for the purpose of moving and pushing forward competition within the telecommunications market. Prior to that, obviously, most telecom companies across Europe were state-owned, and today we have a different reality. Most of them are privatized, and we see more than one player across the European member states providing mobile services, internet services, so on and so forth. But our role also has evolved throughout these 20 years. So we've done, yes, telecoms regulation, we've liberalized markets, we've overseen the launches of 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G. We've ensured that sufficient spectrum has been awarded to industry. But we also had, for a period of time, information society roles where we tried to address the digital divide. We also had initiatives like ZUST, which pushed the startups, business networking aspect within the local market. And now our role is evolving again. So now we have recently been also given the digital services portfolio. So we will be also looking at the aspects related to online harms. And we take care also of other regulations like digital signatures, like e-commerce, so on and so forth. So a lot going on, keeping, let's say, up to date with how regulation is evolving, but also on the new oversight and harms which need to be addressed along the way.
That's so interesting, Antoine. Thank you so much for that great introduction there to the MCA and what you do. And of course, you mentioned there 5G, which is the latest technology that a lot of people have been talking about and interested about. It's been very topical over the past few months, and of course has now been launched by a number of local mobile operators. So, Jean, maybe you could tell us a little bit about why this technology is different, and what its value is to society, to business as well.
5G is the first generation of mobile communication designed with three use cases in mind: enhanced mobile broadband, massive machine-type communications, and ultra-reliable and low-latency connectivity. In simple terms, it is designed to cater not just to connect people, but to connect everything. Therefore, the key differentiators for 5G are not only the higher speed, which will be necessary for enhanced mobile broadband, that is, to stream very high-quality video, but it can do more than that. For example, it can connect multiple sensors together, which can then be used to enable, for example, smart farming, and thus ensuring that resources are used efficiently and effectively, resources such as water, for example. Multiple sensors can be used, for example, to build an intelligent transport system, where, for example, traffic lights can adapt to different traffic, or it can change once it senses that an ambulance is approaching. 5G can be used for much more complex solutions, such as connected and automated mobility, which will be the fabric over which self-driving cars can operate. That is, a car which does not need human intervention. Another interesting and possible use case, which will be enabled via 5G, is connected ambulances, which will allow ambulances to transmit vital data to the hospital. Besides transmitting telemetric information, connected ambulances could transfer high-definition video. The advantages of this is that the paramedics can provide the information to the medical staff team at the hospital in order to ensure that the theater is prepared before the arrival of a patient in a critical, unstable medical condition. So in reality, there are a lot of opportunities. And if we look at what has been going on locally and also internationally, we don't think it is just a hype. There's a lot of interest in 5G and what it can do.
Okay, thanks, Jean. Very interesting to think of that again. A use case that, to be honest, I'd never thought about. That idea of sort of an ambulance, being able to communicate with the hospital and for a hospital to be prepared on arrival. Very, very, very interesting case study. Thank you so much for sharing that. And in fact, Antoine, it's been a really busy decade of digital opportunities, but also threats. And I know this was one of the themes of the conference that was held. You had a morning session very much focused on this particular theme. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about what inspired that theme, the opportunities versus the threats that we have to be aware of.
Indeed. So the inspiration was essentially derived from Europe's outlook. Okay, we see that a lot has been happening lately from a European Union perspective to update the rules. Our rules, for example, the European Electronic Communications Code, in order to make them more relevant to the markets, to the situation, but also the technologies that we have today. And as the internet evolves and becomes more ubiquitous, it connects many more aspects of society, the economy, stakeholders, but also it allows access to new technologies that beforehand might not have been readily accessible. Mm-hmm. So we see artificial intelligence going mainstream. We see distributed ledgers going mainstream. We see the importance of being connected all the time. COVID-19 has shown really how important connectivity is. We're doing this interview online rather than live in a studio today. And all these technologies bring together tremendous opportunities, but they also might give rise to threats. So the European Commission, as the European legislator, has put forward multiple legislative instruments to bank on these opportunities, but also address these threats. So we have programs like the Digital Euro program, which looks at incentives and investment in new technologies. We have the Horizon Europe, we have the Recovery and Resilience Funds. Okay, so all these programs are aimed to increase cooperation in Europe, to increase investment, to facilitate the uptake of technology, so on and so forth. But with more use, there might be more risks. Mm-hmm. So there are accompanying, let's say, rules which address these risks. We have a new cybersecurity legislation, what is known as the NIS2, the Network and Information Security framework, which looks at essentially addressing increased security concerns in services which are critical. Jean mentioned the connected ambulances. Mm-hmm. If the ambulance is connected, you can't afford to for the ambulance not to have the best, let's say, security posture that it can have. Otherwise, lives might be at risk. But there are other aspects, energy, so on and so forth. We have the AI regulation, which the European Commission is working on to ensure that AI is used correctly, but it's also used ethically. Mm-hmm. And we have the digital services package, which looks at the influence of platforms, the likes of Facebook and Google, and addresses both that influence from a market perspective to ensure a level playing field, but also from an online harms perspective to ensure that the appropriate diligence and the appropriate, let's say, checks and balances are in place, such that both society and the economy are protected from the harms which might arise from the use of all of these technologies, essentially.
Thank you, Antoine. And of course, it's so important to be thinking about that side of things and not just the opportunities that are being created by these technologies. So reassuring to hear that this is all being thought through. But Jean, over to you now, perhaps to talk about the opportunities, because they are exciting. There are a lot of opportunities out there. And perhaps also about how the MCA is leveraging those opportunities.
The MCA's aim is to promote and safeguard a communications environment that is conducive to investment, innovation, economic growth, and social well-being. Thus, innovation is one of the key characteristics which the authority actively focuses on, both in terms of supporting the introduction of innovative solutions locally, but also in terms of making sure that the authority is active in R&D. In the past, the MCA organized ZEST, a leading tech startup conference. This was considered as the main gathering for Malta-based startups, which used to attract startup founders, CEOs, investors, etc., giving the attendees the ideal setting to discover opportunities and build lasting relationships. In the past, MCA, for example, also organized Be Smart Online that focused on the safer use of the internet by children and youths, and organized Rovetta Digitali, which delivered ICT training to individuals who were 55 years of age and over. These activities, which were aimed to foster a digitally inclusive society, have now moved to another agency, which was set up with this specific purpose in mind, the TechChem team. Nowadays, the MCA is actively seeking to keep abreast with new technologies, and we believe that one of the most effective ways how we can do this is to join and participate in R&D projects. For this reason, we have a team that seeks funding opportunities that are looking to carry out R&D in research areas which fall within our remit and that can be beneficial to the Maltese connectivity ecosystem. These funding programs include Self Digital, Digital Europe, and Horizon Europe. In 2019, the MCA, in collaboration with a number of international partners, was awarded an H2020 grant to look into future 5G networks that can make use of a marketplace to facilitate infrastructure sharing and spectrum trading. This H2020 project, having an acronym of 5G Zorro, uses a number of innovative technologies such as AI and DLT to define a system-level architecture, combining zero-touch automation solution, and enable a secure, flexible, and multi-stakeholder combination and composition of resources. It is important that new innovative solutions are designed in such a manner that they take into consideration the jurisdictions where they will be deployed. Therefore, the MCA is contributing to the consortium by providing our regulatory expertise, especially in relation to spectrum trading. Participating in this consortium has proven beneficial as we can get first-hand experience of what the future may look like. And in this manner, we can ensure that our regulatory approach is aligned with our mission statement, that is, promoting the introduction of solutions which are most beneficial to society at large. The authority also believes that collaboration and innovation go hand in hand. Through the 5G Zorro project, we are collaborating with a Spanish R&D center, I2CAT, which has been at the forefront and a member of a number of EU-funded consortia working on 5G technology and 5G use cases. Also, among the technology partners which we're collaborating with, we find Telefonica and IBM. A little bit different, it's not related to 5G. MCA is also a member of the Entrusted project. This is another EU-funded project which is looking at governmental satellite communication. Governmental satellite communication, GovSatcom, is an EU project that is seeking to provide satellite communication which is more secure than commercial applications. So obviously this is intended for specific sector of users, not for any users. And therefore MCA is representing the Maltese government in this consortium. And in particular, in this consortium, we are working on collaborating and working towards identifying the use cases which can benefit from GovSatcom. Therefore, in conclusion, our approach to keep abreast with new EU initiatives is to collaborate with international partners to make sure that we can proactively promote and safeguard our society's best interest.
Thank you, Jean. Very, very interesting to hear again about such a vast range of projects that are taking place. And as you said, there are a lot of collaboration happening, a lot of cooperation. Antoine, perhaps you could give me a bit of insight into how you achieve this level of cooperation and collaboration. It must be quite a lot to coordinate.
Indeed, it's quite a lot, but we are also lucky in terms that the prevailing legal framework expects us as national regulators to be involved at the European level in the structures that have been put in place such that we cooperate and collaborate, and we also sometimes do joint decision making. Mm-hmm. So first and foremost, the MCA as an electronic communications regulator is part of BEREC. BEREC is the umbrella body where all the European regulators from all European member states sit together 4 times a year and discuss and address major issues in the electronic communications regulation. This is all done as part of a work program an extensive work program that BEREC undertakes every year, and in which our experts participate very actively. In fact, at this point in time, MCA has 2 experts who are both leading very important working groups within BEREC, as well as our chief executive sits on the BEREC mini board as well. So we are very involved in this umbrella structure which concerns the electronic communications regulation aspect. But we're not just an electronic communications regulator. We are also a regulator for spectrum, for example, for the frequency spectrum. And there we participate very actively in another body, which is the Radio Spectrum Policy Group at a European level. And there as well, we are very, very active, and one of our experts has been appointed a chair of one of the subcommittees of this group. We are very much involved in the Conference for Electronic and Postal Telecommunications, CEPT, again, where we have experts from our teams that are essentially chairing working groups within the CEPT. The International Telecommunications Union, ENISA, which is the EU Cybersecurity Agency. So from an institutional perspective, we ensure that the rules we are implementing at a national level are coherent with those across the EU by actually working, collaborating, and cooperating with all of these umbrella structures that give us the opportunity to meet and exchange ideas with experts from across the EU. But not just that. So once you meet people, you establish networks, you establish relationships, and those same networks and relationships are the ones which we use then to explore and exploit the research and innovation activities which Jean mentioned previously, and which allow us to embark on EU-funded projects, etc.
That sounds fascinating, Antoine. Thank you so much for that insight there. So much happening and so many opportunities to leverage. But again, Jean, we come back to sort of understanding there are the opportunities, but there are also threats. So perhaps you can talk me through how sort of regulatory oversight is evolving. I think that's a very important thing to be talking about. What would be your thoughts on that?
As a member of the European Union, the regulatory framework adopted by the MCA is aligned with that of the European Electronic Communications Code, the EECC. Mm-hmm. The core objectives of the EECC are to promote investment, support an efficient and effective use of radio spectrum, but also maintain the security of networks and services and provide a high level of consumer protection. Therefore, it is evident that safeguarding consumer rights and competition remain key pillars of the regulatory frameworks which the MCA adopted. Moreover, one of the priority areas of the European Union is safeguarding its members and thus the electronic communication networks and services deployed therein from cybersecurity attacks. The NIS directive, the Network and Information Security Directive, was the first piece of EU-wide legislation on cybersecurity, and the specific aim was to achieve a high common level of cybersecurity across the member states. Last year, the EU Commission published its proposal for a revised directive on security of network and information system, known as the NIS2 directive, which shall extend to other sectors, strengthen the power of national authorities, and impose stricter enforcement requirements. If we now look at the European Commission's reaction to threats related to digital services, we note that the European Commission proposed two legislative initiatives to upgrade rules governing digital services in the EU. These are the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act. These two acts aim to create a safer digital services where the fundamental rights of users are protected and to establish a level playing field for businesses. Digital services include a large category of online services, from simple websites to internet infrastructure services and online platforms. In simple terms, anything which is considered illegal offline should be illegal online. And via the DSA, the European Commission is seeking to protect European citizens from illegal activity which can harm them while using digital services. Another key area of concern which is receiving considerable attention is sustainability. For this reason, the European Commission has published a set of policy initiatives called the European Green Deal. The primary objective is for the EU to become the first climate-neutral continent by 2050. One of the key initiatives included in the European Green Deal and related to our remit is the assessment for the need for more transparency on the environmental impact of electronic communication services, more stringent measures when deploying new networks, and the benefits of supporting take-back schemes to incentivize people to return their unwanted devices such as mobile phones, tablets, and chargers. So basically, as a member of the European Union, we are aligned with these initiatives and we transpose, for example, the European Electronic Communications Code has been transposed into national law. And we pay a lot of attention to the initiatives published by the European Union. And in this manner, we are always proactively looking to protect the national market and our citizens from these threats.
Okay, thank you, Jean. Again, great insight there about how things are evolving, how things are changing. And Antoine, to come back to you earlier, you mentioned that the MCA's role in the regulating of electronic communications, of course, is very, very important. I'd love to hear a little bit about how the MCA's role is evolving in that respect.
So the digital decade brings with it new targets. Europe has set itself very ambitious targets to be reached by 2030 across mobile connectivity, across internet services, and these are all spelled out in the Europe's digital program, and they are reported on a year-by-year basis in what is known as the Digital Economy and Society Index. Now, traditionally, from a connectivity point of view, Malta has always excelled and has been at the forefront of DESI. And we are one of the few states in Europe which can boast already gigabit connectivity for fixed internet services across all society and economy. However, we still have a lot to do. Okay, so 5G is a nascent technology, for example, and we've seen only recently the launches of 5G technologies from two of the operators within the market. Those launches were possible because the MCA has ensured that the right radio frequency spectrums are made available and that they could be used by the local industry in order to deploy these 5G services. But the path for nationwide 5G services and for ultimately benefiting from all this new and innovative technologies will take some years to be in place. And our role as a regulator is to ensure that essentially the commitments which have been taken by industry in terms of timeframes, for example, and availability of technology are abided to, so that society and the economy at large can benefit from the use of 5G in terms of mobile connectivity. On the internet front, we're working to increase competition. Okay, so in order to have choice by users on which gigabit connectivity provider to choose. More competition obviously benefits both the economy and society. And as part of our work, obviously, we analyze the market and we implement appropriate rules in order to facilitate competition and address lack of competition where it is evident. However, we also have a very, very important role in informing consumers on what is available out there. Recently, we have updated and relaunched our Telecost website, which gives information to consumers on what products and at what prices are available across the Maltese market. And in the next few years, we are embarking on another project which will geographically survey every single household across Malta and Gozo to identify how that household is served. Okay, so essentially, what type of connectivity is available at which address. And that insight will obviously be very beneficial to consumers and businesses alike, because they essentially can identify what kind of services they can purchase, okay, for the address in which they are residing in. So that's a very important project, which essentially emanates as well from the European Electronic Communications Code. As technologies advance, okay, so later in the decade, we will probably have new innovative technologies coming in. We've had one recently, Wi-Fi 6, okay, so people are really much accustomed to their Wi-Fi at homes. Very few people know that we regulate as well that kind of equipment. You don't need a license from the MCA to operate it, but it is overseen by the MCA through the national legal framework. And since Wi-Fi is so popular, everyone is using it, but there is interference, obviously, because the radio frequency spectrum is slightly limited. We've taken action to introduce and make sure that the frequencies used for this new generation of Wi-Fi 6, are also available in the Maltese market, and in fact, they are also available from this year. And we'll continue doing this work along the way as new technologies come in. Okay, so 5G today, 6G in the future, gigabit connectivity today, maybe faster connectivity in the future.
Thank you, Antoine. Lots to think about, lots to look forward to, hopefully. Again, if the regulation is right and the threats are dealt with, so many opportunities, as we said. And Jean, in order to achieve this, there's a lot of international collaboration that goes on behind the scenes. I know that at the conference recently, the MCA was praised for the work that it's been doing by international counterparts. So perhaps you can talk me through how the MCA is contributing to the regulation in this space.
As stated previously, the MCA prioritizes international cooperation and actively participates in working groups that tackle current but also future regulatory challenges. For example, the MCA participates in working groups organized by the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, the RSPG, which is the European Commission's Radio Spectrum Policy Group. Our colleague, Mr. Adrian Gallia, is the chair of the RSPG Good Offices. The MCA also represents the Maltese government in fora related to the European GNSS program and is a member of the administrative board of the European Union for the Space Program Agency, EUSPA. Despite our size, we do not shy away from taking more responsibility. In fact, for example, our colleague, Deborah Pizzani, has been appointed as vice chair of the Electronic Communications Committee's working group on numbering and network. And Mr. Rodrigo Guzman, another colleague of ours, has been appointed as co-chair of the Expert Working Group on Consumers and Core Indicators at the European Regulators Group of Postal Services. As mentioned previously by Antoine, the MCA also forms part of the body of European Regulators for Electronic Communications, BEREC. BEREC aims at fostering the independent, consistent, and high-quality regulation of digital markets for the benefit of Europe and its citizens. So it contributes to this body contributes to the development and better functioning of the digital single market throughout the European Union. It does so by aiming to ensure a consistent application of the EU regulatory framework, and it helps to bring even greater benefits to consumers and businesses alike. A number of working groups are formed to assist in the completion of BEREC's annual work programme. Each working group has 2 appointed co-chairs from different NRAs. I have been appointed as the co-chair of the working group Planning and Future Trends for 2021 and 2022. This working group has a strategic role to keep abreast with new developments that may impact BEREC's future work. During the year 2021, for example, this working group has organized a workshop inviting experts to discuss the envisioned impact of 5G on regulation. The PFT working group has also published 2 midterm strategies to increase the effectiveness of the collaborative relationship that BEREC maintains with a number of institutions and international partners. Also, for example, our colleague Isabel Faraday is also the co-chair of BEREC's Expert Networking Group on Communication, and as mentioned previously by Antoine, our CEO, Mr. Jasmine Bougeya, was also appointed during the year 2021 as the vice chairperson of BEREC's mini board. So basically, in participating in these different expert working groups, the MCA is keeping abreast, and this is liaising and discussing various issues which impact our work with other experts. And in this way, we can benefit from the opportunities, and as mentioned previously, also be in a position to address threats as quickly as possible.
Okay. Thank you, Jean. As you say, so much to talk about there when it comes to how the MCA is addressing the opportunities, but also the threats. And just to sort of wrap up our conversation today, Antoine, it would be great to sort of double down on that, leveraging opportunities, safeguarding against threats. How does the MCA achieve this very important balance?
Indeed, it's a question of balance. Regulators, unfortunately, are not in the business of making people happy. Our rules will sometimes restrict how business operates or how consumers behave, so on and so forth. But we need to ensure the right balance in order to minimize threats and facilitate, essentially, the development and of the economy and the uptake of new technologies. Our most important tool is consulting. So speaking to all the persons who our services, our oversight touches, businesses, consumers, consumer groups, but also other authorities. So we are very much well engaged in discussions with our peers, like the Malta Digital Innovation Authority, like the Critical Infrastructure Directorate, like the Malta Consumer and Competition Authority, where we maintain a constant regulatory dialogue in order to ascertain that our approach to regulation doesn't overburden by having regulation imposed by one authority and then different regulation imposed by another authority. So we try to simplify the burden of regulation. But we also try to ensure that a comprehensive, let's say, approach is undertaken in the rules which we implement. Finally, and to conclude, I think the most important aspect in achieving this balance is ensuring that as a regulator, we have the right people with the right expertise and the right professional background in order to undertake the work that the authority does. And that is why we don't shy away from pushing our colleagues in participating actively across all these international fora, which we had the opportunity to talk about today, and to also take leading roles, including chairmanship positions of very important working groups, in order to advance both their knowledge as well as their exposure in the tools and the toolkit which is available to us regulators in the daily work that we do.
Well, thank you, Antoine, for that insight. Thank you as well to Eugene. Great to hear about all the work that the MCA is doing, the opportunities, the threats as well, but of course, how we can leverage both of those as we sort of go forward into this new digital reality that so many businesses are existing in. So again, thank you for your insight. Thank you to you all at the MCA, and thank you to you, our viewers, for watching us, whether at home or in the office. It's great to have had you with us on the Boardroom. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode.